All right, so welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We are really excited to be doing our fall summit in a virtual manner this year. And if you were a part of one of our sessions, either earlier this week on Tuesday or yesterday or this morning, you're definitely getting the benefit of being able to talk and connect with your colleagues across the country. Normally when we do our fall summits, we are in a local area, so you might be able to connect with your fellow educators in your state or in right around your state, thinking in Birmingham or in Atlanta, Georgia. And this year we are thrilled to be taking advantage of everyone moving to a virtual environment and be able to help give you the opportunity to connect with educators around the country. So we are thrilled about that this afternoon. And so a couple of things before we get right in to the meat of today's session. If you have been collecting your passport stamps for the Fall Summit Digital Passport, don't forget you need to check in for this session as well. This will enter you in for our daily giveaways, swag bags, and other goodies that would be coming your way. I have Simone and Michael and Jordan, some other colleagues joining me as well, and they'll be watching chat. So you will see this link in chat as well. And any questions that you have as we go, please definitely put them into chat and we will get them addressed. And if we don't, at least we'll know who had that question so I can follow up with you after our time together today. So this afternoon, what we're going to be doing is digging into what Classworks has available for you for Tier 1 supplemental learning. And especially now, with us working virtually, either all the time or part of the time with our students, building engaging lessons, it's something we do all the time inside that classroom. You know, we can touch base with our students, we can see how engaged they are and get a sense of that. But when we're working virtually, there are a bunch of challenges that go along with that. And one of them, really for mathematicians and for my math educators, is, all right, it's great. I know they picked B out of this multiple choice question, or they gave me a sentence about how they solved the problem and they've made a mistake, but I have no idea where they went wrong because all we're getting is that little bit of input. So one of the benefits you'll see when we dig in today with our Classworks Math is that you're able to see the students' digital canvas or work area, and the students have multiple ways that they can explain their thinking. And so that way, as you're going back and addressing misconceptions, or maybe a group of your students all solved it the same way and incorrectly, you have that background information and you can actually have a conversation showing your students how they solve the problem. So you're able to look over their shoulder like we normally do in a classroom. Oh, that's where you're thinking. We're actually able to do that in a digital virtual environment that we're working through right now. And part of the reason this is so important is even though 2020 really feels like it's crawling, we know that we're going to blink and it's going to be high stakes assessment time in the spring. And we know we're dealing with addressing COVID slide concerns and gaps that our students haven't had in the past because they may have had more time off than our traditional summer break that always results in some regression and some reteaching in the fall. We know we've got that gap, but we also have our grade level stuff. We need to teach them what they're going to be assessed on that spring assessment, and time is going to slip. So we want to make sure you know all the benefits and how easy it is to assign these math lessons to your students. Now, today we're going to talk about strictly how do we do these inside the Classworks platform. There's a session coming up later in our summit that's going to talk a lot about if you're using Google Classroom or Schoology or Canvas or another learning management system. There's going to be a session, and at the end of our group time today, I'll show you when that session is and remind you where you can go register. That's going to talk to you about, so you want to use these outside of Classworks. How do you do that? So today we're going to talk really about how we do these when we're working inside Classworks. Now, the last thing I'm going to say as we get started is just a quick overview of the benefits. I've talked about quite a few of these, getting our kids ready for high stakes assessments, seeing their thinking and how they've solved the problem. There are additional benefits that are just good teaching practice. We have a gradual release and scaffolded problems, and you'll be able to see one of these in action today. Problems are solved both with multiple choice and short constructed responses. And what's really critical for our students when they get to those high stakes assessments is they're going to be given the opportunity to practice error analysis. They're going to have problems that have a question that's already been solved, and they're going to see how two different students solved it. So you're going to see students apply critical thinking to determine who solved it correctly and how do they know. You're going to see that all of these are aligned to standards. They are aligned to a significant or primary standard, and then also to secondary standards or indicators. And just to help you out as well, you'll see if there are any prerequisite standards from an earlier grade that a student is going to need to be proficient with, or you'll be able to measure as well. Everything that we're going to talk through is evidence-based, and what else would you expect from Classworks, right? So one of the things I do want to say is I have only 30 minutes with you today, and the things that we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you an overview of how to use them, but our time together is short. So I don't want you to feel as if this is it. We have some Smart Guide courses available, and we actually have one dedicated explicitly to Tier 1 math and reading. And that's one that you can take online, on demand, at any time. And that is a great place to go to dig a little further. And then you also have your curriculum and instructional specialists that you're always able to reach out to. And don't forget, I'll show you or point out our in-app chat feature where you can also reach out and get some support as well. So I am going to go into the platform. If you want to follow along, if you want to pull up a screen and log into your own Classworks, that's great. I know that is how I like to learn. I like to learn by following along. And if you're a learner like me, go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to take a look at Classworks. Okay. So a couple of the things that I wanted to talk with you about a little bit is we said that these are standards aligned. And you'll see, and I'll show you where to find this in a little bit, you'll see that we have our standards alignment document. Every single one of these activities is listed here on the title. You'll know the primary standard and then any secondary standards. So let's dig in. I am on Classworks. So here I am on my dashboard, and I'm going to move over here to instruction. On instruction, anything that I've created is up here at the top. You may have stuff there, and you may just be beginning to build custom instruction, and that's fine. If you'll scroll down, you'll see Create New, and underneath that, you'll see Applied Math, Science, and Integrated Reading. If you were here this morning, Jordan did a session talking about integrated reading and how the reading lessons work as well. We're going to go ahead and look at Applied Math. So in the blank space next to the A, you can go ahead and click. And that's going to drop down all of the different grade levels that we offer our math activities connected to. You're going to see under K or grade kindergarten that there are 27 different activities listed here. And one thing to know is they're just in an order. This is not an order for you to follow. It's just a cluster of different activities by standard or just kind of grouped together. You are able to teach them in any order that you need to teach them that makes sense for you and your students. You'll notice starting at grade 1, there are 43 different lessons at each grade level. And again, these are skill specific, and that goes all the way up to grade 8. So everything dealing from counting and cardinality in kinder and first, all the way up to systems of linear equations and coordinate geometry when we get up to the 8th grade level. We're going to be looking at a lesson right in the middle of this band, and I'm going to open up 4. So we're going to take a look at level 4. And we're going to actually be looking at a lesson here with Mrs. Gomez's fruit baskets, 415. So once you select that activity, remember everything on our screens that are underlined in blue are live hyperlinks. They'll take you right to that resource. You're going to notice a bunch of information here. Now, no matter what lesson you clicked on, you're going to be seeing the exact same thing I have. Yours will just be a different name. So before we hit start, before we do that, let's take a look at the teacher resources down here. So everything that is included in these activities can be done online. And by using the digital format, you're preparing your students that are probably going to be taking their high stakes assessment online to use digital tools to show their thinking. But we know there are times where you want to have a paper copy. So down here underneath teacher resources, you'll see that there is a first version right here for our students. We do have a rubric, and that is for our open or short constructed response. We do recognize that many of our states have their own rubrics that are used on their high stakes assessment. You may use, I would recommend using your own states, but if you don't have one, you do have one listed here. And then you're going to have a version of this lesson printable for your teacher. And if you are the teacher, this is a great resource for you. But if you're working with a para or a teacher's aide, or maybe you're differentiating and doing small group rotations, this is a great tool also to help out someone, maybe a substitute who's coming in with the purpose and the point behind the lesson. The teacher's page has the big question or the purpose setting statement, and it also walks through the different steps that students may follow and addresses any common errors that students might make, the reasons that they might make them, and how to address them and help the students get back on track. So I'm going to take a quick look at one of these. So here's the document for the students for Mrs. Gomez's fruit baskets. And you're going to notice that this is formatted so that each problem can be sliced apart if I'm doing this on paper pencil. And a couple of reasons for that. Many of our teachers have found that these different problems, because they increase in difficulty and because they're all on the same skill, they're great for bell ringers, do nows, and exit tickets. So if you're doing paper pencil, or you want to change it up and get some paper pencil if you're back with your students face-to-face, they're already formatted for you to go ahead and do that. The students would have ample room to show their thinking if you printed the documents out. You'll notice that I have one problem here with a star. This is the progressing problem, and we're going to look at that online in a minute. But this problem has friendlier numbers and fewer steps. And it's always multiple choice. This meeting problem, it's also always multiple choice, but you may have already noticed that it's a bit more complex than that progressing problem. In this example, we're really introducing a variable, and with the parentheses, our students are needing to start applying PEMDAS or any other acronym you're using for order of operations in your class. If you continue to look down, you'll see we have our expanding problem. This one is the most complex problem in every set, and always it's open constructed response. So the students now are going to be processing this problem and needing to solve it without having 4 different options to test against. So this really helps them show their thinking. And then the very last problem is always that error analysis problem. So we're going to take a look at these now live in the product. So once you do click start, you're going to have a screen that looks like mine. You're going to see progressing, meeting, expanding, and your investigative work question. So clicking on one, and again, our teachers, sometimes they'll differentiate these and have different small groups assigned to each different type of problem at the beginning. Sometimes our teachers will say, we're all going to do this one together, and then I'm going to release you to do the next one. The nice thing about the way they're structured is they're very flexible for you to use. And as you begin to use them, you'll find that there'll be times that you'll maybe do exit tickets or bell ringers, and then there'll be times where you want to do small group or even a whole group lesson where you're modeling what you're looking for from your students. So once you do click one of the problems, you're going to notice that there are a bunch of tools here across the top of the screen. So the tools are used both to dig into the question. So if you're asking your students or you've set the expectation that there's a lot of information in the question and it can help you solve the problem. So maybe you've asked your students to start highlighting those keywords. So you'll notice in my example, my student highlighted the apples, 9 baskets and 5 oranges, and how many. And they did highlight distribute equally, but when I look over here at their work, I'm seeing a lot of how many connected work, all about adding. I see that they've done their little grid for their place value. You know, they act like they're working on it. I have no idea why they circled the 9. But I can start to determine, why did they pick 40? And if I had talked to my student, I might have realized that, well, they have a bigger number than 40, so they thought 40 was the closest that they could get to. But I now have some background that I can have a conversation with my child on about really why 40. You know, did you notice distribute equally? Where's the math for, you know, what does that mean you do if you distribute? And that might be a conversation I'll need to have with a student. But the students can definitely use the highlighter. So if I thought basket was important, I can highlight basket. They have a notepad. So if there was a formula or there was something I wanted them to think about, they could add a note. You'll also notice that there's a headphone here. That does make it possible for this to be read to them. So if a child has a read aloud accommodation on the high stakes assessment and I need to document that I've provided it throughout the year, this is a great way to document that. It's already built in. And then there's a microphone. The microphone works along with all of the tools on the Canvas. So there will be times where your students will want to use the pen. Here's the pen. They can choose the color and the weight. They might want to use a counter. Maybe they're going to use counters to show how they solved it. They can type in a text box if they want to type in a text box to explain their thinking. And they even have an opportunity to make this Canvas into a grid, which really helps support our students either with area or for building into multiplication with arrays. As far up as Algebra 1, dealing with, again, those systems of linear equations and finding slope. So they have that tool there as well. But sometimes learners don't want to use these tools, or they may have, maybe they're better at explaining their thinking verbally, so they can use the microphone on their device, click the microphone here, and record how they solve the problem. You'd be able to listen to it, and you can also give them feedback that exact same way. So these tools make this learning activity accessible to all of your learners. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one. You'll notice that progressing has these arrows. These arrows tell me that my student is working on it. They haven't finished it yet. They're still working. So if I'm looking at this as a child, this is the exact same screen I'm going to see. And that's great to know, because if you're modeling with your students, you can use that there as well. All of the canvases will look the same, so they can go in and work on different problems each day. If you want to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or you can assign which one you want them to do on a specific day. It's all about building in that practice. So we've looked at what they look like. So let's look at how do we assign them. So you found them under instruction. We're going to go ahead and click classes. And you're going to assign one of these to a class. So once you have your classes link clicked, you're going to go down, find your class. Here's my class, Fall's Fantastic Fourth Graders. And I check it and I click assign. And I was looking at instruction. Everything that Classworks provides, the math, the reading, and the science, it lives here under classroom instruction. And you can assign more than one at a time, but right now we're just going to assign that applied math level 4. And I would hit next. I have the ability to assign it to everybody in my class or to select specific students. This is another way that you can differentiate the instruction that you're providing to your students. So if I had one student who was a 5th grade worker and was really stretching and I was wanting them to be working above level, I could assign them that. And then I click assign down here. Once I've assigned it, what I will see is it'll show up here on my screen. So I've assigned a level 4. I can go in, hit the plus sign. Here's my class list. And now one of the great benefits of this, and I cannot exaggerate this one, is the fact that while your students are working and while they're done, you have access to what they're doing on their canvases in real time, and also to provide review and feedback when they say they're done. So you'll notice here I have the name of my problem right there, Mrs. Gomez's fruit baskets. This will always say ready for review. It's our default, but you can just change it to all. So I'm going to change it to all. And then right next to that, you'll have the student's name. So I'm looking at Leo's. So this is how Leo solved that first problem with the 117 apples and the 9 baskets. And so I can see that he drew circles for his baskets. And then he needed to do some math to figure out how many apples would go into each one. And then he chose the correct answer. I can see he has a checkered flag, so he's done. He thinks he's set. And then I can look at the meeting problem because he has a checkered flag there too. And I can see how he solved that problem. I can go to my next student just by clicking this side arrow. And so you'll notice here now I'm looking at Anthony. Anthony has written this, and you'll notice that he chose the incorrect answer. But now I can see that all he did was add. All he did was add things up. He did not think about what he needed to do. And I can look at my next student. Aubrey hasn't done anything. We need to get on Aubrey. Here I have Ari's. And here I have Missy's. Not really sure. Maybe she thinks that value meant that she needed to multiply. That would be one that I can actually send that back to her and give her some feedback. And to send it back to her, what I would do is actually change this. Come in here and customize and see how she says she's completed it. And I grabbed Ari instead of Missy. I can just click this right back to assigned and click save. And it's going to go straight back to that student. And I would obviously want to do a quick conversation with them about why did I send it back to you. So that is the process for assigning them and what they look like. I know we've spent very little time going through this, and you have some great questions coming into chat. We're going to talk about them. But before I leave here, just a reminder that the professional learning sessions, the Smart Guide sessions, you can get to right from your drop-down menu underneath your name. You can just click Professional Learning. And when you click Professional Learning, it's going to take you to our Smart Guide. And we have a great course right here with some gorgeous orange flowers, hydrangeas, maybe, that you can log in and take anytime you want. That'll go into greater detail. You can also reach out to your curriculum and instructional specialist. We'd be happy to talk with you. And then also, don't forget our in-app chat down here. You're able to come in and type a question here as well. A reminder about the standards. If I go to help.classworks.com, I can actually type in anything I want right here. That's help.classworks.com. And to get the standards documents, so what standards was I going after on Mrs. Gomez's fruit basket, I would just simply type in standards in the search box. And I am going to get an article called Where Can I Find the Standards Documents for Classworks Applied Math? You'll notice that there's one box for each grade. I would go ahead and click 4th grade, and that would bring me here. And you'll notice I did 415, Mrs. Gomez's fruit baskets. Initial standard is an order and operations or an algebraic thinking standard, depending on your state. And then all of the sub-skills. So all of these numbers in base 10 for 4th grade. And then you'll notice that some of these prerequisites were actually at a 3rd grade level. Some of the things that students needed to be able to apply to succeed were taught their previous year. And then you'll notice video way over here in the far right column of my table. There's a Khan Academy instructional video connected to almost all of these lessons. And so that's just another piece that you can add to your tool belt to help your students have an interactive and engaging virtual lesson. So do we have some questions before I totally leave the platform, Simone?
Right now, we don't have any questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we will be happy to answer them for you.
Great. All right.
Joanna had a question come through private chat. I guess it's, hold on. Applied math problems are differentiated. Do you have any examples of how people have used the 3 differentiated problems during the lesson planning week?
Yes. So a couple of different ways that I've seen these used. So we were talking about maybe adding them in as a bell ringer or a do now. Definitely starting with the progressing problem. If you want to assign it to your entire class and have everyone working on the same problem at the same time, I have teachers who will assign the progressing problem on Monday and then the meeting problem on Tuesday and Wednesday. And that way, as the students progress through it, the teachers are able to address common misconceptions before the students are working on a more complex problem. So if you use them for bell ringers or do nows, you're definitely building in that skill development throughout the week. I've also seen teachers use these maybe the week, let's say we're getting ready to do order of operations again in my math class. And we've been spending the last 3 weeks on area, for example. I might start using these before I'm ready to do my full-on instruction on order of operations, just to remind my students and give them a refresher. So that's another way I've seen them used in whole group. When I'm working with some of my primary or early elementary teachers, they love to use these as small group rotation pieces. So if I'm teaching a lesson and I have my teacher-led group and then I have 2 other groups of students working on different things before they rotate to me for the teacher-led piece, teachers will use these problem sets, and if they've differentiated their groups, they might say, all right, so I'm working with my A group right now. So my B group, you're going to do the star problem. Okay, my C group, you're going to be working on the diamond or the rhombus problem. And then we're going to talk about it when you come to me. And that way they're able, that teacher or teachers in that example don't assign the entire class the same problem. They're more strategic about which student groups do which problem. When it comes to that error analysis problem, frequently we know our adolescent learners and our intermediate learners love a little bit of good competition. Frequently, I have teachers who will work with their teams of students, maybe 4 or 5 students, are a part of a team or part of a group. They will give one group one student's solution. So if I click on this investigative work, you'll see that Elena and Trina are the two students that they can look at. So if I wanted to do this as a group activity, I might have this group and this group. You're only looking at Trina. Did she solve it correctly? How do you know? And what did she do wrong if she didn't do it correctly? These two groups over here, you're going to look at the other student. Were they correct? How do you know? And if they weren't correct, where did they go wrong? What was their mistake? And that way they can build those mathematical thinking conversations that our students desperately need. It's one of those mathematical practice standards. And they need to be able to defend their thinking, listen to other peers' ideas, internalize them, and come to consensus.
And just one more question. Can you take these applied math activities and use them with Google Classroom or Schoology?
Yes, you can. One of the things with today's group, our session time today, is all about how do I assign these inside of Classworks. If I want to assign one of these inside an LMS, such as Google Classroom or Schoology, there's going to be a follow-up session that's going to walk into how can you incorporate some of these into a bigger unit or a bigger group of assignments or activities that you're putting out for your students later in the summit. I've got a slide I'm going to show you in just a couple minutes that'll give you that schedule. But you can also always click on your name here and you'll see embed and share. And Google Classroom will work for this. And then there's a web link. And with some of our learning management system connections, you actually begin in there, such as if you use Schoology, you have us as an added resource. And so that process goes a little bit differently. And that's one of the reasons we've got a session dedicated just to that purpose coming up later in the summit. Any other questions?
Don't see any.
All right. So just a couple of things to recap us up real quick. Again, these work great either as a review, an introduction, or if you're just monitoring that the students have retained the skill, that maybe you're going to be circling back to it in a week or two, or maybe a month later. The exit ticket piece, we know we love exit tickets because it gives us that lesson closure piece and gives us a good understanding of how our students understand what we've just taught. So that's definitely helpful. They are differentiated. You can definitely incorporate them either as a review, as a completer, or possibly in as a Google Classroom lesson piece. So we've talked about a lot about these investigative work questions. Don't want to shortchange them. We definitely need to give our students time and opportunities to show that they can explain their thinking, defend their conclusions, and listen to their peers. So Simone's going to wrap us up with a reminder about our All-Star contest.
That's right. Thanks so much, Joanne. So we are kicking off our All-Star contest. The top 500 students with the highest time on task are actually going to win. So be sure to head on over to classworks.com/contest for more information. And I will actually drop that in the chat right now so you can grab that link really quickly.
Great. Thank you, Simone. And we know we always have great prizes for our teachers also who have students that are working on that. Just a reminder, if you joined us after the slide was shown the first time, don't forget, get your passport stamped so you can be in for the swag bags and the daily giveaways. We definitely want to make sure that you've checked in and upped your chances to win at our virtual fall summit. And then a quick thing about our goal setting. I'd love to know if this was brand new information, what your plans are to do with this later on in the year or maybe in the next couple weeks. Drop that into chat. If you had a question that you didn't get an opportunity to ask or you'd like to follow up offline, drop that in as well, and we'll be more than happy to reach out and support you and your team in putting these pieces to work. So this is the first week of our virtual fall summit. So here are the rest of the sessions that are coming up. And you'll notice that we do have our LMS session coming up on the 26th. If adding some of these lesson pieces into a Google Classroom or a Schoology or a Canvas-based lesson is of interest to you, we really hope that you'll come join us. If you go to our Classworks.com website, there'll be a link there where you can register for all of these different sessions that are coming up. Anything else from anyone? Or we'll wrap it up. And thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day and enjoy almost the end of the week. It's almost Friday. Thank you all.